Okay. This one was originally written October 29th, 2008 in response to the controversy about the very first self-published edition of Carcosa. This one is tricky as it involves some interpersonal conflict and scene drama from a decade ago, which won't travel forward, so easily. But the greater point, I think, is as relevant as ever. Also, do note, as I go through this, that Carcosa was the very first work from an author other than myself that I announced I was going to publish 2 years after all this happened. Now to get to it. Time travel, 2008. The recent review of the creature generator over at Dragon's Foot has become a battleground over, Carcosa. Creating a mess for the moderators, and all of that mess had to do with Carcosa, not the creature generator. Here is one guy, which, in 2022, I'll just refer to him as Bob, so as not to inflame old feuds. Here's what he wrote about me. In this case, the author has a well-deserved reputation for taking people's money, not publishing the product, diverting attention to another dissimilar product, and taking the side of some of the most puerile, demeaning porn to ever call itself an RPG. Sure, I could take my dissent to his blog, but I don't much care for what he thinks, and I'm not trying to start a dialogue. I am trying to alert others in the community, under the same big tent, if you will, what an utter tool that guy is. He's talking about me. He made his own reputation and well deserves to hang from that petard in public. By the way, anybody notice that the Christian Children's Fund refused a sizable donation from Gen Con this year because of the source? When our community's distinguishing trait is an inability to hold ourselves to any standard, is it any wonder? Now, all of this was under a thread dealing with the review of the new version of the random esoteric creature generator for classic fantasy role-playing games and their modern simulacra. This version wasn't yet out, and I didn't publish it. Goodman Games was doing that edition, They were doing the selling and the handling. All I did was supply the text. So that's what was being, reviewed. And the note about taking money was about an early crowdfunding project I did called the Insect Shrine of Goblin Hill, which was delayed for years, but eventually everybody got compensatory product after I became a regular publisher, and the Insect Shrine itself became part of Better Than Any Man. Point is, this sort of issue, which has happened more than once, is why I don't use crowdfunding, even in this age of incredibly lucrative crowdfunding. There's something about the process of saying, I'm going to have this thing done, just fund it for me, that short circuits my brain when I do that, so I gotta not do that. And anyway, that's all besides the current point. You could see from some of Bob's original comments before it was moderated, that I guess I should put a link here and hope that post still exists, where I responded to his questions in a manner I'm sure he didn't expect. There's another poster, Don. He'd asked whether the creature generator had specific charts for all sorts of Carcosa-related shenanigans, trying to be cute. But the sad thing is, I was intending to do those charts just for him when I got home from class that day, but everything had already been moderated away, because people were passions about Carcosa, the passions were running high and everyone was just sick of the arguments already. But, I'd been made aware of a product called City State of the Invincible Overlord from 1976, which, like the really old grognards, the old schoolers were well aware of. That was a bit before my time. I came along in 84 into the hobby, but this was a well-known thing from, earlier. And it includes tables to determine things like a woman's bust size, a woman's passion, how old she is, which gives possibilities for underage 18 results. It's not dissimilar to what Don was sarcastically asking for in his now deleted post. Even if we ignore explicit content in M.A.R. Barker's book of Ebon Bindings, remember when we were able to reference him without additional problems, surely we're not going to say that City State of the Invincible Overlord was some sort of fringe product with little actual gaming applicability, or that Bob Bledsoe Sr. isn't a name of great note. I mean, are we really going to say that, you know? This is really weird. I mean, I had made a post on my blog earlier called Veteran of the Psychic Wars. And that post had been inspired by Bob's own story about D&D related persecution when he was younger. As of right now, he's still the guy with the last comment on that post, and it's hardly a negative comment. This is what he said, and I won't use the other funny voice. I've seen actual fucking book burnings that involve my own books. I've been suspended from school for D&D 3 times, grounded for weeks for D&D, slapped around by parents and teachers for D&D, and undergone one really hostile psych exam. Suffice to say, nearly all of those witch hunt stories were my stories. And to me, it's really odd that someone that said that not too long ago now says something like this. By the way, anyone notice the Children Christians Fund refused a sizable donation from Gen Con this year because of the source? When our community's distinguishing trait is an inability to hold ourselves to any standard, is it any wonder? What's the lesson here? That the suspensions, groundings, slappings, book burnings, suspicions of mental illness, and that last one's come up quite a bit lately, both in 2008 and these days. Doesn't. But what's the explanation? All those were justified? That the donation refusal was justified? What exactly is Bob saying? If you make products I approve of, then the backlash is absolutely terrible and unfounded. But if I don't approve of the product, they're right. That's what it sounds like to me. So Bob once tasted the, I hope, figurative lash as a child. But as an adult, instead of remembering it for the injustice that it was, now he wants to hold the whip. And appealing to the feelings of those that don't like our hobby and will never like our hobby as a reason for us to behave in a certain way, I think that's cowardice. I mean, many of us, our friends, you know, many of us or our friends hid our gaming from parents or teachers or other authorities because they had an erroneous idea about what was dangerous and what was harmful to our young minds. Now, as adults and parents, I mean, think, learn, remember, are you inflicting the same harm now onto your kids or other kids? I am trying to alert the others in the same community, under the same big tent, if you will, what an utter tool that guy is. Right here is the problem with scenes. Once it's established, you need to fit in with the pack, or you're out of the pack. Somewhere, somehow, the traditional community became a thing, its own thing, instead of a mere commonality of widely divergent people. Actually, on the web, I think the traditional community became a thing first, thanks to places like Dragon's Foot, and experienced splintering from there. But in 2007 and 2008, it seemed to coalesce again, in no small part to the interlinked blogosphere satellite ring happening at that time, and the common cheerleading for the simulacra like Osric and Labyrinth Lord and so on. And then we got a little tighter again as we weathered the release of 4th edition D&D and the massive amounts of "this is now the one true way, get on board or get left behind" sentiment that always comes along with a new edition of official Dungeons & Dragons. It is sad that some reactions, particularly Melon's review, hopefully a link appears there, and it's being most disappointedly parroted by the otherwise incomparable Grognardia, place the assumed reactions of others and a fear of others' judgment as more important than their own opinion. I mean, Take this excerpt from Mellon's review. That is my suspicion, that it will not go down as Carcosa, the fan-made supplement that rightfully deserved to be called Supplement 5, or outdid the others even, but Carcosa, the child rape game. And who will want to buy, read, and play that? People being transgressive for the sake of being transgressive? And even if that is an appreciative target audience, is it really the best one to have? Okay. 2022 interruption here in the middle of that. I still hear this sort of thing all the time, but never about Carcosa. The Lamentations edition of Carcosa came out in 2011. It has been available through retail outlets for over a decade, and I haven't heard a peep about it. And it remains a steady seller. The moral outrages about content literally do not matter. They have never mattered after about 5 minutes pass. But every new thing brings that new outrage to replicate the previous cycle over and over and over, and it is always bullshit. People like different things. They have different influences, and they process them through different brains. Every other creative medium, music, novels, movies, everything, have examples of people pushing the boundaries. RPGs should be no different. The sensitivities of some can never be used to silence the need of others to express. Period. And if you try, well, we will fucking destroy you. How's that? So, now that that's out of the way, back to the original 2008 text, and you tell me whether we're all advanced, whether we've learned something in the past 15 years, or if we're just stuck in the same stupid cycles forever. My words again from 2008. How many supporters of Carcosa have been silenced or hedged their support and made sure to say the correct things because of this? How many people are now going to keep quiet because they don't want their threads interrupted by off-topic discussions about how they refuse to condemn the work of certain others? But I love swimming in this kind of shit. I live for it. Accusers and finger-pointing and fear. People declaring what should not be. This has woken up my brain and giving me clarity and direction I haven't had in a couple years now. Maybe this is why Malashevsky gets hate mail concerning his children, and I just get snide internet digressions despite his rather reasonable delivery and my mad waving of the arms and frothing of the mouth. I don't pretend to be a reasonable person. Jeffrey McKinney told me that a number of people that bought Carcosa told him they found about it through my blog, which makes me think that my style of writing is accomplishing exactly what I intended to do. Not to be a clubhouse for people to feel great and fuzzy about their hobby, but as a rallying point and energizer. No rest. Action. But I don't support Jeffrey and Carcosa because of any particular content or edginess. I support him because he has supplied something new while being firmly based in tradition and loyal to its inspirations while being masterfully written and immaculately presented. You see, in a perfect world, the leading publications would be those that shake away the complacency of the scene, challenge the assumptions of the reader at every turn, and stay entirely away from safe places. Then should come the specialized pieces that help recreate specific atmospheres or works of specific authors. Then at the bottom of the barrel should be the TSR clones in both format and content. Meat and potatoes is fine for the game table. It works. It's nothing to shy away from. My weekly game, at the time that I wrote the blog, pre-Lamentations, my weekly games were meat and potatoes. But nobody should pay a penny for a commercial version of meat and potatoes. So people need to decide, are they playing OSR variants of D&D because it works as a current modern game? Or is it just nostalgia? I don't care about what games I played when I was 8 or 12 or 16. The game works for me now at 33 in 2008, and for me now at 47 in 2022. You want a time machine to feel the way you did 20, 30, 40 years ago? Fine. But stop polluting my scene with your unimaginative, generic, childish shit. I am tired of it, and I am tired of you. It is sad that publishers have been reduced to being content providers who need to shut up and pump out what their fans want, who are not allowed to have an opinion lest their customers disagree and then boycott because the writer is not just like them. I wrote this in 2008, right? And they're not allowed to be truly creative. Today's role player looks to the publisher to supply their creativity and then bitches and whines when it doesn't fit their own ideas. This old school scene, it's not any different, although some would claim it's the antithesis of that environment. It's not. Just at the time, a much smaller scale. Here are the tools. Create, publish, imagine the hell out of it, fight on. But you better be part of the clique. You better not rock the boat, and you'd better not deviate from what people remember from back in the day. And you'd also better not remember things that they didn't. They'll get you for that too. This scene, like every other scene, is a joke. It eats its own and is not a free creative environment. Any individual worth the description will piss on the concept of a scene from a great height and then proceed to create without care. I mean, some of the most lauded works to come out of the traditional scene have been mere restatements of 25-year-old, well now 35-year-old plus works that differ from the originals only because of the legal requirement to do so. What more needs to be said about the scene than that?